Hey, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Great Locks. I'm Gunther the Great, and today we're going to be talking about PrettyBoyFredo's dreadlocks. I'm not sure if they're fully formed dreadlocks or kind of like free forms or just curls, but they're pretty interesting. So let's take a look at them. So PrettyBoyFredo, also known as Alfredo Villa, he was actually born in Palm Beach, Florida. And besides him being in Palm Beach, he's originally Costa Rican from his father's side. And the cool thing about the Costa Rican culture is that they're really into twists and braids and dreads, and typically on the freeform side when it comes to the dreadlocks, or more of the loose dreadlocks. And it doesn't even matter the curl pattern over there, which it really shouldn't be, but from straight hair all the way to the really thick, 4C hair, there's dreadlocks all across the board. And it's a very popular hairstyle besides the braids and the twists and everything else that they do. So it's cool not only to see him follow the Costa Rican culture of that hairstyle, but also the Florida culture with that hairstyle. We see a lot of people in Florida with wigs, or just dreadlocks in general, but it's typically on the wigs or the freeform like hairstyle. Now with PrettyBoyFredo, it's pretty interesting to see how his dreadlocks are, because you can't really tell just by looking at them if they're freeform, if they're maintained, because they kind of blend the line between the two. They could be semi-freeform. So that leads us into how did he get his dreadlocks. He didn't really show us how. You don't really see it in images. You just see that it kind of just slowly went into it. One thing that you did notice, he let his hair get kind of nappy and then looked like he did some sort of sponge rubbing, and his hair got to a spot to where it looked like it was kind of free-forming, kind of like how Chaos Eyes was, and all these other people that have thick hair, which leads me on to his hair type, which he most likely has a 4A hair type, which isn't super tight of a curl pattern, but it's very good for getting dreadlocks. Because with this hair type, it still has a really nice curl pattern, but at the same time it's a very tight curl pattern, which allows the hair to lock up really quickly. And it leads me to think that he's been doing a braid out in order for his hair to actually form up, which I almost think that he started out with sponge rubbing, which a link to the dread sponge is going to be linked down below. But a dread sponge is essentially a sponge with holes in it that allows you to go counterclockwise or clockwise on your hair, allowing it to coil up. But I would recommend using this dread sponge on shorter hair, maybe 2 inches, maybe 3 inches at the most. And that's what we saw with his hair when it was shorter. It looked just kind of nappy, and that's a really cool look. But then we started to see his hair forming, and then now we see him doing braids, and then he does braid outs. So it really leads me to think that that's how he initially started them, with a braid out, which that is 100% possible, and I would recommend it for all you guys out there that want to do it with a tighter curl pattern. Don't try this if your hair is really loose or straight, because a braid out isn't going to hold your hair together. But I would say if your hair is from a 3A and up, definitely do a braid out, because it'll work if you want to do that method. It does take a little bit longer of a time to lock up, but the cool thing is if you do braids and then you keep on doing a braid out, you keep on maintaining it most of the time. So if you're a person who likes wearing braids, I would definitely recommend that, because essentially what is happening, you're braiding your hair and then taking the braids out. Everyone knows if you have a hair type that is from 3A or higher, you'll know that when you do a braid out, your hair will typically stay in those sections. So that's literally how you'll do a braid out in order to get dreadlocks. Some people call these braid locks, but personally for me, braid locks is when you braid the hair and leave it inside of a braid, and those braids turn into dreadlocks. And those are box braids, braids off the head. So with him doing a braid out, I would definitely recommend you to use Jamaican Mango and Lime locking gel, or just any locking gel in general. I'll link 2 locking gels down below. One is the Jamaican Mango and Lime, and then there's a lower priced version. You could check both of them out. They both work very well. I've used both of them. But what you do, instead of using gel or cream or anything to do your braids, you would use the locking gel, braid your hair, and then that locking gel will hold those sections in. And then when you do a braid out, you can leave it for a certain amount of time, or you can just go back into rebraiding the hair if it's getting frizzy. Now with looking at PrettyBoyFredo's dreadlocks, he resembles a lot of the D'Angelo Russell, and it's literally almost the same hairstyles, especially when D'Angelo Russell had shorter dreadlocks. So we could probably expect PrettyBoyFredo's dreadlocks to turn out like D'Angelo Russell's, how they look now. And it'd be really interesting to see where his dreadlocks go, because with all these people that start their dreadlocks, especially with shorter hair, it's really cool to see if they're actually going to grow it out or trim it and maintain the length. I'm really interested to see where he's gonna go with his dreads. Just a side note, not really much about dreadlocks, but it's really cool to see where PrettyBoyFredo came as far as his childhood and how he grew up. I mean, we've heard stuff about that and he's talked about it on his channel. And it's really cool to see how he overcame that and to see his success now and see how much of a positive person he is as far as, you know, giving to people and making sure that he is like trying to be a positive person and do all these things. And seeing what he came from and having him overcome all those things, it's really cool to see people's transformation. And I think that's just encouragement for all you out there. If you're going through stuff right now, just know that if you keep pushing forward and keep trying to be positive, and obviously it's not just all about positivity because there's always going to be negativity, but it's always about making yourself better and getting closer to, for me, getting closer to God and making sure that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. But I really feel that's what PrettyBoyFredo did and overcame all these obstacles because it was tough, I'm sure, for him. But back on the dreadlocks topic, how does he maintain these things? He does braids, and that's the cool thing about this. When you start your hair with braid locks or doing a braid out in order to get dreadlocks, obviously they'll keep their sections when you do the braid out, and then you maintain it with doing braids, and it stays in those twists or in the braids while they're in the braids. So it's literally like a win-win. You have a maintained hairstyle, the braids, while creating the hairstyle that you really want, the dreadlocks. So I think this is a really good method to choose if you plan on keeping a maintained look the entire time. Because with twisting a gel, with sponge rub, with crochet hooking, twist and rip, any other method, it's not gonna look 100% maintained the whole process of the way. But if you do braid locks or braid outs with intentions of getting dreadlocks, you can always keep your hair maintained with the braids, and your hair is continually forming inside of the braids. It may take some time, but it's gonna look maintained. Now guys, since we reviewed PrettyBoyFredo's dreadlocks, and I'm almost certain that he started out somewhere down the line when his hair is really short with a dread sponge, so I'm gonna link the dread sponge down below with a tutorial on how to use it. And it's very easy, and I'm telling you, it works so well. I did it to start my first set of locks and they turned out great, and they'll work great for you too. And then say down the line you want to do what he did with the braiding the hair and then doing braid outs, you can do that too. But since PrettyBoyFredo started out with the sponge rub, I'm linking that down below, so make sure to go check that out. You can also go to DreadLocks.com that has the dread sponge along with all these other products, which I talked about a little earlier about the locking gel. You can go find that on DreadLocks.com. They have both of the locking gel options on there, and you can choose whichever one you think is best for you. But DreadLocks.com is basically a place where you can go and find all your hair needs, typically just dreadlocks, but there are other stuff on there for anybody who doesn't have dreadlocks. But the question of the day is from Swoosh and Prod on Instagram, and it says, "Hey man, I was wondering if you knew a way to make my dreadlocks bend more naturally. I've had them for half a year now, but they are still very stiff." Now looking at this photo, his hair does look very maintained and very well for only been in for half a year. But with him having straight hair, it's gonna take a long time for these to actually want to bend and not be as straight and kind of just flow. So the only answer I can really give you on everybody who has straight dreadlocks and your hair is very stiff, you're gonna have to take some time. You're gonna have to allow your hair to lock up and mature. And that's really how it goes, because your hair will tighten up, and with it being really tight, believe it or not, it'll loosen up. But it's really gonna take some time. With straight hair, it can take up to 2 years. With, you know, more of a tighter curl pattern, it's different. It'll be a short amount of time. But with straight hair, definitely be in it for the long haul if you want your hair to be bendy and kind of wavy and go with the flow, because it's gonna take a long time. For me, on my first set of locks, my hair didn't lay down until I think maybe 2 or 3 months in, and then it didn't even start like bending and doing what he wants his hair to do until maybe a year. But it does take time, and dreadlocks do take time, so be patient, and hopefully that answers your question. But trust me, like, just be patient and allow it to do its thing and get to where you want it to go. But that's today's video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you guys want to get hair like PrettyBoyFredo, make sure to follow the steps like I said, and don't forget to check out the product of the day and go to DreadLocks.com. But other than that, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.